What's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Monday. It is Monday, September 25th, 2023, about 11:30 a.m. California time here. Start of the work week, right? But that's okay because they don't last long. Latest earthquake activity of 1.1 into the Alaska area in the green flag. And let's see, what do we have overnight kick up? Looks like a little bit of movement up into the Cascadia Basin area, just shy of the Cascadia subduction zone. Very sensitive area in terms of, well, plate dynamic and plate stress out here across the Pacific Northwest. We do have this awfully strong low pressure system spinning over this area. Of course, I've always been a believer in weather, how it can have the adverse effects on plate tectonics, and that could have something to do with today's activity. Got a little 4.1 off the coast of Washington. Again, just shy of the Cascadia subduction zone. This is going to be the subduction zone region, which stretches from about the Queen Charlotte Sound area up north all the way down into Northern California. Super huge subduction zone, very capable of producing a 9.0 or greater earthquake. The last one was back in 1700. So 323 years of built-up strain out there. Could go any day. All right, so a little bit of activity stirring up here off of the plate boundary, but within the Cascadia Basin. That's normally a sign here of some stress out amongst on either side of the plate. The Earthquakes Canada map, let me see what we got. This is that same area, but the Canada version of some of the earthquake activity up here. And it looks as though there's been a little bit more in terms of earthquake activity than what we've seen with the USGS map. Here's today's quake. That's going to be that 4.1. They're actually reporting it as a 3.5. So a little odd. Sometimes, these agencies, they all have different ways of measuring a magnitude of an earthquake. Kind of odd. You think they'd have a universal way of making sure that it comes out to the correct magnitude, but that's what they do. Either way, it looks like there's a little bit of further movement here that's been taking place over the last week and maybe over the last month here. If we look at the legend here, it looks like quite a bit of earthquake activity specifically at this region. So another separate swarm down here, closer, a little bit closer to the, well, in this case, a Juan de Fuca plate. Now, hold on a second here. Let's look at that. It almost looks like goodness. Okay, let's see here. That looks a little odd. So there's Washington, right? So the activity that we're looking at is, at least on the Canada earthquake map, is up here, a little bit closer to the Explorer plate around this area. Kind of hard to tell when this thing's all twisted around. Not quite the same map as the USGS, but today's activity looks like it's positioned a little bit further down here, off of this area. 4.1, 6 o'clock this morning. This activity up here, this 3.5 and whatnot, is from, well, it's from today, but it's positioned a little bit further up north. So the Earthquakes Canada map is not showing that 4-pointer today. So it's a little off here on the scale. But the activity that we're looking at is roughly around this region, but that is from, looks like about 10 days or so. Maybe Earthquakes Canada only covers a certain area up here. So either way, a little bit of movement here. USGS showing that 4.1, 10 kilometers deep. That's normally the defaulted depth level when it comes to oceanic earthquake activity out here. Either way, the Earthquakes Canada map did show some movement up here, a little bit closer within this region here. Tremor map. Let me pull up the tremor map here from last night. About 48 epicenters of tremor. Not a whole lot up here. In fact, if you look at the last week or so, most of, well, going to go back maybe the last month. This is show us broad scale activity and where it has and where it hasn't hit. This is a tremor along the Cascadia subduction zone. A good portion of it's covered. We're still lacking a little bit of activity up here, tremor activity. And it looks like this section right here may not be showing any tremor on the map, at least within the last month. And that could have something to do with potential lockage up here. Maybe there's just not enough strain, but I think there is. Definitely with this earthquake activity showing up there on Earthquakes Canada, which is in that area that's lacking tremor movement. So just kind of keep an eye on that with today's activity stirring in the mix as well. The Pacific Northwest, not a whole lot going on. Mount St. Helens area, still seeing some earthquake activity. Looks like, excuse me, maybe a little bit larger than past couple days. Got a 1.9 coming in late last night and a 1.2 earlier just after midnight. So with that going on, need to check here the specific seismograph station, see what we got going on here on this Monday. Ooh, what do we got up here? Got that kicking up again. Shishaldin volcano up along the Aleutian Trench. Been having some periodic eruptions, but I want to check out Mount St. Helens here first. See what's going on here. Normally, if they're showing a handful of earthquakes, you could probably triple that amount that they're showing. Here is the seismograph stations there up at Mount St. Helens. Now, it doesn't look like there's too much activity. This one, okay, this one was last night at 22:34, at 1.9, 05:34 UTC time. 05:34. It could be man, goodness, it could be anywhere within here. Maybe this area. A little spike of an earthquake. There's other readings here that don't quite look like earthquake activity. This broad region could be wind. I don't know exactly what it is, but earthquake activity in general is going to look like these well-defined spikes right here. And yeah, it's just hard to say. Mount St. Helens been having an earthquake, kind of an earthquake swarm here over the past month or so. Nothing spectacular, but still a little bit above background levels. But for the most part, all that little earthquake activity looks like it has died off. But this stuff that's kind of a drawn out thickness, I'm not for sure what it is. Some type of other either environmental noise out there. Got to remember this station is positioned way up top here on the Mount St. Helens area, and I'm sure there's a lot of wind. There still may be some rock falls. Let's check out the gas emissions here, see if anything has been elevated. Now, wind has gone up. There's that big time wind pattern up there from that low pressure system spinning off the Washington coast. I mean, we're getting the effects of the wind down here in Northern California today, so that tells you how powerful that low is spinning up there. But it looks like we've seen increasing wind here up at that station there at Mount St. Helens, which could have an effect on some of the readings there of the seismograph station as well. Let's check out carbon dioxide. Looks neutral for the most part. No elevated activity there across that reading. Same for the temperature areas of the Mount St. Helens crater area up there. And sulfur dioxide, this here is about when the swarm started. The little earthquake swarm that we had peaked up here a little bit. And that kind of got me a little nervous because I thought, wow, if you got sulfur dioxide increasing in the emission rate and earthquake swarming, well, that's obviously a sign of some volcanic activity. But it has since died down roughly about, average level, I would say. So we really haven't seen any peaking going on since that earthquake swarm began. But we'll continue to watch that area for, who knows what, maybe some further earthquake swarming. Definitely keep an eye on it. All right, let's see what else we got here as far as the earthquake movement goes out here across the California region. Pretty quiet, not a whole lot going on. This little area that you see on the map is just the Calpine hydrothermal operations, and that's something we cover on occasion. It's just a bunch of these facilities out here that create energy, green energy, by well, there's a whole process involved in this, so I'm not going to go directly into it, but it does involve earthquake activity. Check it out, Calpine Hydrothermal operations. All right, the rest of California here did have a little bit of movement right smack dab on the San Andreas Fault. Late last night, I seen this one come in as it's getting ready to go to bed. 3.1, 14 kilometers deep. Looks like that may be just off of the plate boundary here. Not on the creeping segment. Creeping segment's just a little bit further up north here near Parkfield. But it looks like it's just around this mountain range here. You can kind of see the warping going on throughout the topography of the land. This map here, you can see where that pressure and whatnot builds up in this region. It's a little 3.1 stirring up down there last night. Extreme Southern California. No major swarms going on. A handful of smaller quakes throughout the Los Angeles area and the Salton Sea area where the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault runs up to. Looks pretty quiet. Only a handful of smaller microquakes out there in the last 24 hours. Yellowstone National Park. Well, beautiful area, right? But not for me. There's too much traffic up there this time of year. I'd rather take a back road somewhere in Montana or Idaho, and you can pretty much see the same thing that you can see at Yellowstone. Well, except for Old Faithful. Beautiful geyser up there, but it's like a big city. It's like driving in a big city when you go up there. Once was enough for me. Okay, earthquake activity here at Yellowstone. A little bit of activity. If you call maybe 1 or 2, 3 little spikes out there on the graphs today. Nothing major going on. This will change. If these guys get some thunderstorms, we'll see that signature pop up here later this afternoon. Not for sure what the weather forecast calls for that area, but a lot of times in the afternoon, you get those thunderstorms popping up, and they do show some seismograph readings. 2.5, Wilson, Oklahoma, down here near the Oklahoma-Texas border outside of Ardmore. Beautiful area. I do like staying down here when there's some storms brewing up. Let's see. For the most part, though, looks like quite a few oil fields getting hit out here. Did see a 3.7 earthquake out into the Velma, Oklahoma area. Let's see what we got going on here. This was from yesterday, but I don't remember seeing this thing pop up on the update last night, or as far as the map goes. Looks like there's some oil pumping operations out here, maybe some wastewater disposal ponds. But definitely some type of oil drilling in that area of Duncan. 3.7. Still got a little bit of activity down here stretching across the Ardmore area, and a little swarm. Let's see what we got here for this movement specifically right around this area. Let's see, a lot of these look like some type of shops. Who knows? It's possible we could see maybe some oil pumping operations out there. A lot of times they'll look like these little checkered boxes out here, but it's hard to say. There's some tanks right here. This kind of looks like an oil pumping operation, some more tanks. But either way, a little bit of activity stirring up out there in that region of Oklahoma. Down in Texas, out around the Permian Basin, that's obviously a given for earthquake activity in that big oil-filled region. Christine, Texas. Let's see here. What do we got? A couple earthquakes in the last 24 hours. Some of those today. And we'll zoom in here. You can see those little peppered white areas. Well, from this distance, it doesn't look like much, but you have to move in. Zoom in here to notice a similarity between all of these little checkered boxes, and they all have little oil tanks on them. Some of them bigger than others. That's obviously where some, others are getting richer, striking that oil, striking that liquid gold. Major oil field out here in this region, so we're seeing earthquake activity ramp up out here in the last 24 hours, and that's normally a sign of plate stress out here against the North American plate. It's almost always under strain, right? Some type of strain, whether it's from underneath or from, the general plate dynamics of the plate boundary. Of course, you got the the North American Craton region that sits within this zone. This is about the southern end of it. So there's always strain moving around it, moving up against it. And that looks like what's going on here today. But, you know, those weaker areas where the oil fields are or where the operations are getting hit. A couple other smaller quakes in the last 24 hours around the New Madrid seismic zone. Let's see what we got for the Puerto Rico area. Not a whole lot going on. Got our typical swarming here. This region gets squeezed quite a bit by the Mariotos Trough and the Puerto Rico Trench up here. There's a couple different subduction zones around this area of the Caribbean plate, and they're almost always getting squeezed. Kind of what's going on here today, it looks like. Nothing major, but definitely seen some swarming. 4.1 Chile-Argentina border. 229 kilometers deep, pretty deep earthquake there. Not seeing a whole lot of movement, though, far as large-scale events go. The Atlantic Ocean, looks like a couple fours kicking up here around the Azores area. Let's see what we got. Well, nothing showing up here on the USGS map, but there is some fours and threes kicking off here around these fracture zones of the Atlantic Ocean. That being provided by the EMSC. One earthquake down in the South Sandwich Trench yesterday. That's about ready to drop off the map there in that red color ring. Of course, the red ring's indicating older movement. The white indicating newer activity. Hawaii, 2.8 out there in the beautiful big blue Pacific. Most of the movement around the Pahala area, and also a couple smaller quakes here around the hill in a slump. As far as the Kilauea volcano, well, it's pretty quiet. We're not seeing really any major earthquake activity out there. Nothing really stirring up. Let's go ahead and check out the latest notification here from the USGS, which was put out, well, a few days ago. So they don't have a update out yet, which means that things are pretty calm. Nothing changed there at the Kilauea volcano. All right, what else we got? The Alaska area. There's that, of course, we got that. Let me go back here and double check that. The Shishaldin volcano up here is in the red status, meaning that we're probably looking at, look at that beautiful volcano. Looking at some eruptions or maybe some ash cloud activity. Let's see what we got here for right now. Here is the information statement that was put out today on the Shishaldin volcano, which sits at a red warning. An explosive eruption is underway with an ash cloud reaching around 45,000 feet. So things kicking up here. It has been off and on over the past 30 days or so. There's the ash cloud from the Shishaldin volcano. Initially reached 45,000 feet above sea level. Starting about 5 o'clock this morning, Alaska time. Ash emissions continue, but the height is decreasing. Seismic activity dropped sharply along with the start of ash emissions, and now is at low levels. So we get these little buildups below, then there's enough strain to produce these little explosive eruptions. But it looks like they're keeping this at red and warning due to this new activity. Based on previous eruption cycles, significant ash emissions are likely to continue for several hours. Pyroclastic flows and mud flows are likely on the immediate flanks of the volcano. So, this is just one of those things that comes and goes, as far as the eruption status at this volcano. And it doesn't look like there's any webcams, at least within that area. I don't know if there's any. I'm not going to go through all that search. But we'll continue to watch that, right? Obviously signs of volcanic activity peaking up here across that region. The Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, 4.3 from yesterday. Very minimal movement, though, showing up here on the Earthquake 3D globe for this area. Most of the movement today has been clustered around the Indonesia islands once again. This is almost always the area that it just clusters up into. A lot of stress, and if you can pretty much X marks the spot on any area of the globe where all the plates kind of meet, and where the dynamics are the highest in terms of plate movement stress, almost always within this area. You get a lot of reinforcement by numerous plates building up in this area. And that's where the earthquake activity tends to hit quite a bit. Today, 3s and 4s, upper 4s, it looks like. Nothing major yet. We're still watching this area for some movement across the Solomon Islands area. That's going to be this region right in here. About Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands area, this little plate boundary here has been somewhat quiet with movement back and forth, skipping over this area. You got deeper movement here. Some deeper activity and shallower earthquake activity across the western regions of New Guinea. But it's lacking across this region here. Had an odd earthquake yesterday off the plate boundary and deep as well. So something's stirring up within this region of the Fiji area. Of course, this is, it's not abnormal to see earthquake activity in the deep regions here, but off the plate boundary up north is a little odd. Historically, shows us that there has been some, but not a whole lot. Not as much as what you would see in the typical areas here around the Tonga Trench. A little scattered up here. So I believe that's major strain building up, potentially about ready to release within this area here. Around the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu area, maybe the Papua New Guinea region. Somewhere within this plate boundary. I think something is brewing. All right, further to the west here around the Java Trench, Andaman Sea 4.5. That was from yesterday, so not a whole lot of movement taking place there today. Looks like there may be a handful of smaller quakes in the white circles that the EMSC is reporting. Mediterranean, fairly quiet. Really, actually, if you really think about it, this is somewhat quiet. 2s and 3s, but not a whole lot of movement here across this plate boundary. So we'll continue to watch that. Divergent activity occurring out in the Atlantic. That could have a little bit further effect on strain building up across the Mediterranean. We'll have to keep an eye on that, though. All right, space weather activity. Let me check GeoNet servers here real quick. Sometimes I skip over them, and I don't mean to. It just, let's see here, 2.74 hours ago, it looks like, North Island. We have been seeing some movement around the Hikurangi subduction zone, or the just went blank there, Taupo supervolcano, but it's looks like it's moved northward here, north of the Taupo supervolcano area, but this may be associated with that whole complex structure over there, a little bit further to the north, although it looks like the activity has died down since last night with only minimal small amount of earthquake activity reported in the last 12 hours. So just kind of keep an eye on that. As far as the earthquake drums go, see what we got out here. Doesn't look like much. A handful of earthquakes, and of course that region that's seen that 6-pointer a week or so ago now. South Island area still seeing some aftershock activity, and that's continuing for a little bit. Probably will continue for a little while. These magnitudes don't look like they're getting bigger. Just a handful of earthquakes out there. No news reported on any of this newer activity. In fact, that's the last one 6 days ago on that 6.0 that struck the Central South Island region from the GeoNet servers. All right, space weather activity. Kind of interested in this, seeing if we got anything developing overnight. We have been watching a couple different sunspots here, 3445 and 3435. Fairly dynamic. That's from last night, so let's see what we got for the latest imagery. Well, goodness. This area right here looks like it has dropped slightly. There's still quite a bit of core structure out here as far as the magnetic complexity, but I see a separation here between these areas, and most of the time that's not what you want for some strong flares being produced. So not 100% certain this thing's going to get any stronger. We'll continue to watch it though, but it looks like it did weaken slightly overnight. This one up here looks roughly about the same, neutral. It does harbor a little bit of potential for some flaring, but I don't see any major areas within this region that could harbor some large flares. Unfortunately, it was looking somewhat promising here over the last couple days, but it looks like it may be weakening. But we'll continue to watch that. It looks like maybe a newer sunspot here developing back behind it. Getting slightly complex here within this core of the sunspot. And around the eastern limb, we do have a couple newer giant sunspots, it looks like, on the northeastern limb. We'll have to watch in the coming days as they make their presence known. Continue to watch that for some flaring. Right now, 99% chance of C flare, M flare at 55, X flare around 15% chance. And let's see, something's flaring out there right now. Let's see where that's at. Getting a little bit of C flare activity potentially. Hard to say. Maybe just coming from one of these far side sunspots here, or just in general, maybe the energy that's being produced by this sunspot. I don't see any major flaring going on currently, but it looks like a little bit of the global D-layer absorption map is showing some type of flaring. Not really seeing it up here, though. All right, let's see what else do we have here, folks? Today, getting a little bit of wind down here in Northern California, but definitely nothing like what they're getting up into Washington and Oregon. We got this massive low pressure system here spinning off the coast. It is stirring up wind. Look at this. It's probably a good 1,000 mile away from my location. At least 1,000 miles. Yeah, somewhere around there, I'm guessing. We're getting some of those winds pushing up here in the Sacramento Valley outside of Chico, where I live, gusting pretty nicely, but it's nice and cool. I got 73 in my backyard, and it shows 73 right there in Chico. So, beautiful day. It's not supposed to be that hot today. I think maybe around 78. So, I'm going to get outside here and do some yard work before it starts raining. Once we get in the rainy season, it's hard to get out there and do some yard work. So, but for the folks up in the Pacific Northwest, there is a little bit windier day, a little bit rainier. As far as the current, let's see what the satellite looks like here for this one. Beautiful low pressure system, massive. Last 2 hours or so to show you, just spinning up there. Unfortunately for us here in California, we're not really expecting to get too much moisture from this area, unless you're up here against the extreme northwestern corner of California, Eureka, Crescent City area. Some of these regions can get quite wet. Talking about 4 to 5 inches of rainfall expected from this storm system. Quite a bit of convection going on out here too, with some lightning, and that's a sign of some strengthening going on. So expect that to continue throughout the day. Wet and windy is in the forecast there across the Pacific Northwest. As far as the potential for some severe weather today, well, there's a marginal risk out here. That's going to be due to those, not marginal, but general thunderstorm activity, I should say, popping up. Really no severe weather threat. That's going to be down here in Texas with the marginal risk. Looks like just maybe some wind and some hail. Nothing major, no severe risk. As far as the percentage, just slight chance of seeing some large hail and some gusty winds out there in Texas. Let's go ahead and check out the numerical model here. It's getting that time of year, right, where things are starting to change. Weather patterns are starting to flip, and that's when I like to watch these models, see how accurate they can be. But there's our low pressure system off the Pacific Northwest. High pressure up here in the that's an extreme high pressure up into Canada. As we put this into motion, I'll show you the general pressure ranges. Look at that. That's awesome there. I like that. Much cooler for California. That trough dipping down further along the west coast, enhancing the high pressure out here across the east. Unfortunately, no cooler weather in the forecast for you guys yet. I'm sure that will change as we head into October. But for the most part, the rest of September looks pretty hot, warm over there, cooler out in the west coast. So that's going to be the pattern here for the remainder of this month. All right, anything else going on here today, folks? Looking at the EMSC model here, looks like a little bit of earthquake activity up. What's that up in the Canada 3.0 from yesterday? Yeah. All right, I'm gonna jump off here. Have a good one. Stay safe out there. Stay dry if you're out in the rain. I wouldn't say stay dry. I would say enjoy the rain. Right? It's refreshing after not having it in a little while. You know, that first rain's always a enjoyable sight. A little bit of activity stirring up near the Octello Wells area. That's just off of the San Andreas Fault, west of the, well, it's a ways away from the San Andreas Fault if you really think about it, 10-15 miles, but it is on the Pacific side of the plate boundary. And kind of stirring up here in the last hour. It just popped up here on the map, so it took about 20 minutes to put it up there. Goodness. As far as the seismograph stations go currently, maybe there's some of that earthquake activity occurring in Southern Cal. That's a station called Barrett. That's right around that area that we're seeing those two little earthquakes pop up. But for the most part, seismograph stations here look pretty neutral. Not a whole lot going on currently. But again, that can change in the blink of an eye, right? So make sure you guys have an earthquake plan. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you guys a little bit later. I was just looking at this, these little orbital viewers on asteroids and near Earth asteroids or near Earth objects, and pretty interesting to watch and mess around with here a little bit. See how close these objects get to the Earth. Just checking out this specific asteroid that a lot of people chat about, but I'll go into that a little bit more later. Maybe we'll do a little coverage on that. But for now, I think we're safe. Don't have any major imminent impacts, at least according to the data. Still have to worry about the ones that we have not found, right? As far as these hiding asteroids, gotta watch those pretty closely. We'll catch you guys back here a little bit later tonight with the Monday night update, unless something major happens. Take care, and we'll catch you guys later. Have a good one.